Hello, welcome to Love Lust Betrayal. Subscribe if you like our stories. Let's dive into the story. My niece moved in after her parents kicked her out and tried imposing rules in my house, so I taught her a tough lesson. Kesha is 14 years old and female. She is my husband's sister's daughter. She's become increasingly defiant, to the point where her own parents have kicked her out. She has been suspended from school twice this year and is on her way to being expelled. She was suspended twice for starting fights with other girls. She has a fiery temper for an 8th grader. Of course, her parents were outraged when she was sent home from school. But when they sat her down to discuss it, she ended up hitting her mother. Her father dragged her away and kicked her out. He informed her that she was not welcome to stay there until she got her act together, and that was the end of it. I believe Kesha spent the night at a friend's house before arriving on our doorstep the next day. My husband and I both work from home, so we were present when she arrived. We were initially perplexed because we had heard nothing about her suspension or the altercation with her parents. But, of course, we allowed her in, because she is family. She explained that the day before, her parents had kicked her out for no apparent reason. She said her mother had become physical with her and she was afraid, so she came to us. Even as she said all of this, we were doubtful. We knew Kesha had been on a cruel streak recently, so my husband snuck away to contact his sister and get the whole story. Of course, his sister gave him the entire truth. She claimed it broke their hearts to do it, but they didn't feel secure having her in the house anymore, so they kicked her out. My brother-in-law went on to say that he was tired of allowing her to get away with her behavior. If she was going to learn, she needed to do it the hard way. My spouse has always had a sweet place for his niece. He couldn't help but invite her to stay with us temporarily. We don't have any children yet, so we have plenty of room for her to stay. I was concerned about the concept because I had no prior experience with children, let alone aggressive ones. But I decided that it was better for her to stay with us rather than with a random acquaintance until things between her and her parents calmed down. The first night went well. She was on her best behavior, and we had a lovely supper together. My husband and I had hoped her entire stay with us would be like this. We believed she could just need a pause to think things through, and that this would be beneficial to her. Unfortunately, the peace did not endure very long. We awoke the next day and resumed our normal activities. We took baths, played music in the kitchen while preparing breakfast, and arrived at our home office by 8 a.m. to begin our day. Kesha didn't leave the guest room until around 11:30. We heard her moving around in the kitchen and went out to see if she wanted to join us for lunch. We could tell just by looking at her that this was not the case. As we went into the room, she appeared tough and gave us a death stare. I asked her how she slept, and she sarcastically replied, "Like crap." My husband raged at her, telling her she couldn't talk to me like that. She lashed back, stating she could be in a better mood if I wasn't so loud in the mornings. Apparently, she heard me singing in the shower and claimed I woke her up. She asked if we could keep it quiet in the mornings from now on. We were stunned. I'd never had a guest speak to me like this before, especially a child. She then retreated to her room for several hours. We needed to get back to work, but we were both concerned about how the remainder of the day would unfold. Around 7 p.m., Kesha emerged from her room. I had saved her a plate for dinner, so we figured she would come out and eat. Instead, she threw a piece of paper down on the counter and began walking towards the front door. My husband asked where she was going, and she answered, "Out with friends." He warned her she couldn't go out alone right now, especially at night, with no idea where she was going or who she'd be with. I intervened and asked her what the piece of paper she had laid down was about. The list was handwritten. I grabbed it up and read it aloud. Kesha's house rules. No music or singing before noon. No disgusting food for dinner, also known as veggies. No boring television shows. Avoid asking foolish questions. Please do not enter my room. My husband laughed at the list, but Kesha's expression was dead serious. She truly expected us to obey her crazy regulations in our own home. I had had enough with this bullshit. I went to the door, grabbed my coat and keys, and instructed her to get into my car. She was perplexed, but my tone made it clear that I was not joking. She left for the car, and I assured my husband we'd be back in a minute. We traveled in silence for around 15 minutes. I was furious, and I could tell she was too. After a while, Kesha realized she didn't know this part of town. She hesitated before asking where we were headed. I informed her that if she didn't want to stay with her parents or with us, I'd show her where she would end up. We were approaching downtown, and the look on Kesha's face told me. She had never been to this section of town before. Every street corner was crowded with homeless people, all of whom appeared dirty and high. There were tents and trash everywhere. When we came to a stoplight, people approached the windows and began banging, asking for money. Some of them were outraged, and one man even kicked the car as we drove away. I could see Kesha was afraid, but neither of us said anything. Then I pulled into a parking area and turned off the car, ensuring the doors were locked. We had parked in front of a homeless shelter. People lined up outside the entrance, hoping to acquire a hot supper, blankets, or, if they were lucky, a roof over their heads for the night. Some of the guys were yelling and arguing with one another, but the majority of the women simply looked sorrowful. It was dreadful, and even I was afraid to be there. Finally, Kesha asked if we could leave. I informed her that if she wanted to come back to our house, she had to follow the rules. I also informed her that if she wanted to stay with us, she needed to call her mother and apologize, as her parents simply wanted the best for her. She nodded, and I knew I had communicated effectively. I don't believe anyone in her life had ever put her in her place like that. But, I believe, at that moment, a part of her knew it was precisely what she needed. When we came home, my spouse seemed anxious. Of course, he was intrigued about where I had taken her and what we had discussed, but I gave him a look that indicated I would tell him later. We all went into the kitchen, and I took out the plate of leftovers we had set aside for Kesha earlier. I heated it for her, and we sat down at the table together. My husband and I were startled that Kesha spoke out first. She inquired about what we both did for work. My husband was taken aback, but pleased to respond. After that, we talked about our careers, local colleges, and various extracurricular activities she may participate in. It was actually a wonderful evening. I may have been tough with her earlier, but I believe I got through to her. Now I only hope it sticks and she may return to her parents' place soon. Let's see what happens after she apologizes to her mother. The day after we visited the homeless shelter, Kesha called her mother. She asked if I would sit with her while they talked, and I of course agreed. She truly made an outstanding apology to her mother. By the end, she was in tears but smiling since her mother had accepted her apologies and invited her home. She startled me by asking if she could stay with us for a little longer. Her mother consented, so we decided she could stay with us until the following Monday, when she had to return to school. We may have had a bumpy start, but I believe this was the finest possible outcome. It's been a couple months since Kesha visited us. Since then, her conduct seemed to have changed completely. She has not received any further school suspensions, detentions, or calls to the office. Her grades have greatly improved, and she even auditioned and was accepted into her school dance squad. Her parents say she hasn't been hanging out with the same pals, and her attitude at home has significantly improved. Overall, I would say her stay at our house was a success for her. I'm extremely proud of her and excited to see what her future holds. God bless you. Thank you for identifying her as a child in need of instruction. You'd be an amazing mother. Great job, Auntie. I hope her parents are half as supportive as you are. My partner is upset with his parents about this, but some of his siblings and parents believe I was the jerk. So, here we are. I'm a 29-year-old female professional boxer who is probably in my final year or two of competitive competition. My guy, a 35-year-old man, is very supportive of my career and a true gem. We live on the opposite coast from his family, and he has had a strained relationship with his father for years, so I have never met them. His parents, on the other hand, have been working hard to make things right over the previous year. When he indicated that we will be in a nearby city for one of my matches, they wanted to have a family supper. I was genuinely pretty excited about it. I don't have a family, and his family is large, so I've always wondered what it was like. We tried to schedule dinner before the match because I always look a mess for a couple of days after a competition, but they had a conflict. So we scheduled it for a few days before flying abroad to give me some healing time. I wasn't seriously injured, but face bruises and cuts are impossible to hide. My partner had already informed his parents about what to expect, but I don't think they took it seriously. When we arrive, his mother is visibly uncomfortable, while his father simply stares at me. Some of his siblings and their families were present, and I was swamped by the nieces and nephews, who all had a million questions. That's where I could have made a mistake. I informed them about boxing and showed them a video of a portion of my battle on my phone to help them understand why I appeared to be injured. I told them that I was alright. It clearly impressed a couple of the nieces, as they spent the entire supper asking me questions and being amazed that girls could accomplish things like that. His father often attempted to redirect the conversation, which irritated him. He then remarked that it was excellent that I was thinking about retiring and starting a real life soon, indicating that I would have enough time to put together a household and have a family with my boyfriend. I told him that at most, I might become a trainer, and that I already had the life I want. His mother commented that it was a shame I was bruising up my nice face. I joked that this was my winning face, and that she should have seen the other woman. Except for the children and one of his sisters, the entire situation seemed strange and uncomfortable. When we arrived home, my boyfriend checked his texts and then called and raged at his parents. I later learned that his mother had told him that I was extremely improper and a negative influence on the children. One of his brothers inquired whether he was going to bring Barbarian Barbie back for Christmas because his children were so excited. However, his cool sister informed him that their daughter had already asked and Aunt OP will return. It's actually caused a big problem between my boyfriend and his parents, and I'm thinking if I should have simply kept the boxing stuff to myself. However, Barbarian Barbie sounds like a fantastic name to me. NTA. Your boyfriend warned the family, but he still decided to move the meal from before to after your disagreement. You have nothing to be ashamed about. I feel horrible for some of those kids though, having such narrow-minded, oppressive parents and grandparents must be awful. You informed his parents about the natural repercussions of your career. They had plenty of time to discuss it with their children beforehand if they wanted to. Assuming you are correct and they did not take your warning seriously, they still had the option to explain it in a kid-friendly manner throughout the dinner. In the lack of explicit guidance from them, you acted in a natural and reasonable manner. You provided a short and comprehensive explanation of your apparent injuries, including video evidence of where they came from. I'll confess that I was startled and impressed by how you articulated your explanation. Then I realized that, like any other career, you'd undoubtedly had plenty of practice answering basic questions about it. So, I'm no longer surprised, but I'm still really impressed. NTA. The amusing part is that the family is completely overreacting. While it's fantastic that girls can be boxers, most girls, and boys, don't want to be. This means that, like many other things that children are enthused about, their enthusiasm for this will decrease. I am a 40-year-old woman, and my cousin, a 36-year-old man, married his 35-year-old wife 5 years ago. During that time, she has been a welcome addition to our family. She's an academic who works as an assistant professor in a major metropolis in the neighboring state. Although she does not commute to university every day, she works from home the majority of the time. My husband, a 42-year-old man, and I paid them an unannounced visit a while back and were surprised to see how disorganized their home was. It wasn't too bad, although the floors should have been vacuumed and there were filthy dishes in the sink. My cousin's wife performs the majority of the cleaning, but since she started her new work, she has had less time for it because she is constantly grading or teaching. My cousin doesn't do much cleaning because his father is quite traditional about gender roles and did not raise him to help his wife clean the house. My cousin's wife has done an excellent job of teaching him to do more around the house, but it has been a lengthy process. When my cousin's wife celebrated her birthday recently, my sister, 45, and I decided to buy her a Roomba to help her keep the house tidy. My cousin had personally apologized to me during my previous visit for the house not being as clean as it should have been, so my sister and I decided that the Roomba would be good for her. Apparently it wasn't. She was angered by the idea that she was a lousy housekeeper and that cleaning was completely her burden, rather than asking our cousin to help her more often. What bothered me the most was that my cousin's wife gave the Roomba to Goodwill. If she didn't want the gift, she could have returned it to me, allowing my sister and I to receive our money back. I don't believe I'm T since she could use some aid. But now my cousin informs me that his wife is still furious and would not attend family events. The holidays are approaching, and if she does not appear, everyone will wonder where she is. My cousin is upset because he will be caught in the middle and obliged to explain her absence politely. Oh, big time. First and foremost, with seasonal changes, stressful work, and life in general, things must occasionally be put on hold in order to accommodate higher priorities. You paid an impromptu visit and were surprised to find her unprepared for visitors. I might understand anxiety if the house had mounds of items everywhere, making it impossible to move and posing a health risk, but dishes in the sink and unvacuumed, unswept floors are nothing. That's just a normal daily mess. Your cousin's wife also mentioned that she works from home. What do you believe this means? Do you suppose she's just sitting about twiddling her thumbs, waiting for something to do while getting paid? Second, you say your cousin's father taught him traditional gender norms, yet, it appears that your parents did the same. Along with questioning why you're so critical, you should also consider what you've internalized and why you believe cleaning should be left to the woman in the home. This is a bizarre case of cognitive dissonance. Finally, I'm grateful she donated it. You deserve to lose money for perpetuating gender stereotypes and claiming that your cousin's wife isn't doing enough. You have no control over what someone does with anything you've gifted them. Honestly, I'm voting for Whitey. You went to her house and complained about the degree of housekeeping to her spouse, whom you openly confess does nothing to help around the house, but not about her spouse. She works a tough job while still doing the majority of the housework that her spouse does not do enough of. Yet you believe it is appropriate to give her a vacuum cleaner as a birthday present because her spouse is too manly to help around the house adequately. Why not give it to him on his birthday, as he is the one who is lacking? Also, her husband is an AEH. Why the hell did he explain the present to her in that manner? It was rude. A spa gift card would have been a more appropriate gift for her. She works hard, but is unable to complete all of her responsibilities. Your relative refuses to help with the housekeeping because he believes that traditional gender norms are the norm. Perhaps you should have bought your relative a vacuum and cleaning supplies instead of his wife. It's really insulting to give her something on her birthday unless she has said to you that she wishes she had a Roomba. The gift was unsuitable.